growth phase and is vibrant. It is moderately mature, but the rate of maturity seems to be considerable and significant. Now, the early established public sector undertakings, higher education institutions, R&D centers, favorable climate, which together attracted talent from diverse corners of the country, were primarily responsible for the emergence of Bangalore ecosystem for startups. Today, the strength of the ecosystem lies in an increasing number of startup entrepreneurs and sources of entrepreneurship. It is increasing. In fact, we have come across prospective startup owners coming from Indians, coming from Canada, coming from the US. They are actually not from Karnataka. They are not Kannadigas also. They are actually either from Tamil Nadu, maybe from Andhra, maybe from Kerala, maybe from Maharashtra, maybe other parts of India. They all converge in Bangalore. So, and sources of entrepreneurship is pretty vibrant. And stronger support systems for the emergence and survival and stability phases of the startup life cycle. The growth phase of the cycle is gaining ground. Now, Bangalore ecosystem might have adequate technology mentors, but it lacks high-quality business mentors and seed funders in adequate numbers and in diverse areas. Both will have a determining influence on the quality of startups and their rate of success. Finally, the registration process for startups is not smooth, and that is why we were told that there is a startup which facilitates the registration of startups in Bangalore. So registration process for startups is pretty cumbersome, that they say, and so is raising finance for scaling up. Therefore, some have registered their companies in Singapore but operate out of Bangalore. Inadequate physical infrastructure and deteriorating quality of life are the causes of concern, where the policymakers have a decisive role to play. Next. Thank you.
Maybe this is redundant. Regardless of the definition that you use, the essence is pretty much there is a core idea behind the innovation. It's a creation of the mind. That's how intellectual property derives its term. And most importantly, it changes status quo. But with all these ingredients, it is still not an innovation. Why? Because until and unless you can monetize the idea, it's not an innovation per se. And how do you monetize it? If the idea can help you differentiate yourself in the marketplace, which means it needs to be novel, it needs to be original. Those are the characteristics that we advocates use when we look at an idea and give an opinion to a client on whether it is patentable or not. And it has to be useful. Obviously, it has to be a useful improvement. So anytime somebody comes and shares an idea, the obvious question is it useful? If the answer is no, then the next question is it entertaining? And guess what? If it is neither useful nor entertaining, there is only a third basket, useless. And the idea itself, from a patentability perspective, has to necessarily not be obvious. Example, classic example, rectangles with rounded edges. And it should not be abstract, which means it should be manufacturable. Otherwise, I can conceive an idea wherein I think of a ladder, that will take me straight to space. That's also an idea. And through patenting, you actually create entry barriers. So the bottom line is, for it to be a viable innovation, 3 characteristics are needed. It has to be desirable for users, possible with technology, and 3, viable in the market. And it's actually to me, there are various ways in which you look at patents and you try to categorize them, technology wise. You may look at it industry vertical wise. But all patents, to me, fall into 3 silos. And the 3 silos are patents that have expired. Obviously, the rights are extinguished. Patents that are existing, rights are still subsisting, its extent. And 3, expectant patents, those that are on the anvil, that are being experimented on, rights have still not been claimed, it's up in the open domain. Now, most policymakers, particularly in India, would look at the expectant. How do we get an Indian company to become a Google? How do we get an Indian company to come up with an iPod? It's the wrong approach. It's not going to get us far because the starting points are here. You start with expired patents and existing patents, and then look at what you can do, how you can improve upon the patents that are already out there, and then perhaps over a period of time, courtesy, law of averages, and sheer number game, you will end up with a Google or a Yahoo, although Yahoo is a lame duck these days. Now, I'll start with the expired patents. Anybody recognize the images here, the drawings here? This is actually a digester. It's nothing but your mixer grinder. Now, there is not a single home in the United States which does not have this unit in the kitchen sink. What does it do? Your kitchen sink gets clogged. You just press the switch, you switch it on, and then it grinds whatever is clogging it. And what do we do in India? We have these metal hangers, we stretch it and then start inserting it. Doesn't work. We send somebody to the store, pick up a packet of Dranex, use it, acid. Finally, we go call a plumber. Now, this has been there. The patent for this has been there for some 40, 50 donkey years. It's called a carburetor in Canada, incidentally. It's very simple. It costs maybe the bill of materials. If I were to draw upon my value engineering days, it may not take more than 1,500 or 2,000 rupees to manufacture this. The design's already there. But guess what? It's imported. It's not rocket science. It's imported. The imported unit, the low-end unit costs 15 grand. The high-end costs 25 grand. Now, this is an existing patent. Why can't our medium enterprises, businesses manufacture this? Beyond this, maybe, a city like Bangalore has a massive garbage crisis. Maybe this can be used to get rid of much of the wet waste that is generated in the kitchen. Now, this is the potential of existing patents. I refer to it as creative imitation. Truly speaking, it is copycat imitation, but you use the copycat imitation creatively to accomplish something, maybe to solve your garbage crisis problem. Now, what's the potential for this? There are 10 million patents that have expired. Our SMEs, our enterprises ought to be doing this. Beyond this, what you do, you can even enhance it. Guess what? 2008, somebody has filed a patent with the PWM, with a little bit of electronics, pulse wave modulated based. And it's already there and we've lost it. And when you enhance an existing patent, that is when you're disrupting what exists, you're changing the status quo, and that is disruptive innovation. So again, when it comes to disruptive innovation, the tough question is, how do you disruptively innovate? There are 7 M's, 7 ways in which you can disruptively innovate, and I'll give examples quickly. I'm sure if you are as old as I am, you'll remember this. Those older would remember the gramophones and the record players. This was how we would listen to our music. Then what? That was a tethered system. Later on, it got replaced by the boombox. Why? Mobility. Boombox to the CD, to the Walkman, to the CD player, and onto the iPod. If you look at it, mobility and miniaturization has driven the music system. With the iPod, there was a bit of a value add as well, which I'll come to a little later. So much of it has been a drive to make stuff smaller, easy to use on the go. The second M is a mashup. Again, in the 70s and 80s, your desktop was truly a desktop because it will occupy just the CPU unit. And I'm sure Anil will relate to it. Would occupy your entire desk. So your keyboard, there would be no room for your keyboard. You would keep it on your lap. And that in a way was also a laptop. But with technology, people have moved into integrating systems, integrating stuff to simplify use of products. The third is modification, improvement. Again, the automotive seat belt, one of the greatest inventions of the last century. Why? There are incidentally 3,000 patents on just the car seat belt. This is a Volvo, was the first one to introduce it, 1962. And for the first time, cars being, products that you use to move from point A to point B, and then point A to point B quicker and faster, you made the transition for the first time to move from point A to point B safely. So the idea is it's always a pain point in scenarios, you're in other scenarios. The fourth one is a business model. Business model driven. The distribution network. Direct to customer and configuration of systems. The fifth one is over a period of time, society changes, people's habits change. The microwave of why did it get treated? Because two-income families, you ended up with husband and wife working, lifestyle, drive. This Gillette patents.